elle est en place. C'est la poudre.
Tiens, on a découpé une femme en morceaux rue de la bienséance à 2 pas du chat. Tiens, on a découpé une...
I am a feminist.
Je vous obsède avec une constance
je ne me suis pas conduit
qui appelle quand même l'admiration.
D'une façon conforme à ce qu'on attend d'une jeune fille d'abord et d'une femme ensuite.
I'm sorry that I didn't become the world's first black classic pianist.
Je crois qu'une femme qui existe dans son temps, à l'intérieur de son temps, n'a pas d'époque, elle marque son époque.
Welcome to La Poudre, an intimate, in-depth conversation with inspiring women. They are artists or activists. They are creative. They're powerful. How did they become women? What books did they read? What fights did they fight? What do they scream? What do they dream? I am Lorraine Bastide, and today my guest is Anne Hidalgo.
I was convinced that feminism really was what could change the world radically.
I hate cars. I loathe them. I curse them. I hate what they convey: masculinity, money, and of course program obsolescence. I hate what they spit, fine particles that get into my kids' lungs, and this dirty fog above Paris. I hate the sound of horns. When a car driver nervously horns close to a pedestrian crossway as if it was going to make the delivery man upload faster, I am that person who will knock on the window and call them names. Horning hurts pedestrians' ears, I scream. Yesterday evening, the car driver apologized, and I felt like a big victory. I know my opinion is not the popular one. I am also well aware that a great number of workers, single moms, families, or disabled people do need their car daily. But ever since I found out that 80% of car trips in Paris are inside the city and that 64% of drivers come from the upper class, and above all, that most of these trips involve a driver alone in their car, I am more confident about this opinion. I catch myself dreaming of a fully pedestrian Paris, with sidewalks overflowing with vegetation and greenery. Long live the metro. With Anne Hidalgo, we talked about parity, arenas, and separate spaces. Anne Hidalgo, you are the mayor of Paris, or rather Paris mayoress. I can't help but give a feminine gender to your title, because I like this word very much, despite what the Académie Française might think of it. And I do want to insist on the fact that you are the first woman to head City Hall since the function was created. You're also one of the very few women in the world to lead a city of several million inhabitants. We're currently at the heart of Paris. We can sometimes hear the metro rolling under your big, impressive office. You're also the leader of the C40, actually 81 big cities around the world committed to environmental justice and representing 651 million inhabitants, 25% of the world's GDP. Anne Hidalgo, you've been doing politics for more than 20 years. Is it easier to be a woman of power in 2018 than in 1998?
First, thank you very much. Is it easier? I think there's an evolution that happened in 1998. We were preparing a bill on parity that was voted in 2000, so obviously there are more women today in the arcanes of power. But we're still in a world, especially the political arena, made by men, for men, with their own rules. So there's still a basic situation for women that is quite complicated to deal with. You're still often considered as illegitimate, you're still caricatured. I was able to move away from this, but objectively it still exists, and it remains difficult to be a woman in politics in 2018 in France.
We'll have plenty of time to go back to this. But before, let's take a step back.
Of course.
In La Poudre, we like to try and understand itineraries and journeys that enabled women to get to where they are today. At age 2, you settled with your family in Lyon, and you grew up in the neighborhood of Vez, right? How was it to grow up in Lyon and in this neighborhood?
D'abord, c'était nouveau puisque je venais d'Espagne. Mes parents avaient décidé.
It was very new to me because I came from Spain. My parents had decided to emigrate to France, and Lyon was a choice linked to my father's aim, becoming a worker in Lyon's factories.
En fait, je sortais quand même.
I was getting out of a kind of cocoon. You're in a country, you have a language, a family, etc. And all of a sudden you get to a country where it's cold, where you don't speak the language, where your parents don't speak the language either. And you feel this kind of anguish due to this lifestyle change. So it was necessarily very intense.
De ce changement de vie, donc c'était forcément, je pense, très intense. J'ai des souvenirs.
I have memories, real memories, not memories I've been told, real memories, because I think these were times I had to live with some kind of anxiety and also some kind of excitement to discover something new.
À travers l'angoisse de mes parents, de l'anxiété, puis aussi voilà, une excitation de la découverte. Donc Lyon, à l'époque, c'était une ville très grise, très sombre.
So Lyon back in the day was a very, very gray city, very dark city.
Le plan Malraux allait arriver quelque temps après pour rénover.
The Malraux plan would come in later to renovate and bring back some beautiful colors to the old city center of Lyon in particular. The cold struck us when we arrived. There was one winter when it actually snowed. We'd never seen this before. We found it beautiful. At the beginning, we thought there were tiny bits of paper falling from the sky. So again, these were times of discoveries. Growing up in Lyon meant plenty of discoveries, and also my parents' convictions that we were going to grow up here. We weren't just passing through. We were here to adapt and fit in. It also meant learning a new language. There was actually the language we spoke inside and the language we spoke outside, because me and my sister, who was 2 years older than me, learned French in a few months in kindergarten.
It comes very quickly.
Children learn very quickly. It took us 3 months to speak French. We spoke French among ourselves, but we spoke Spanish with our parents. As you can see, this learning, these discoveries, it was a very exotic city compared to what we had known in Spain. I do keep a fond memory of this time, a really fond memory of Lyon. In Vez, we were in a housing estate. It was very old, had no bathroom. It was very rough. But in this estate, which was not really that big, you could find all nationalities. There were Armenians, Italians, Spanish, Portuguese, Russians, French, and with groups of kids, we would play together in the courtyard, doing all these things together, going on adventures.
Et il y avait tout un groupe de gamins voilà, avec lesquels j'ai grandi. Et on jouait ensemble dans la cour, on faisait plein de trucs, voilà, on partait à l'aventure. Donc,
I read that you used to play women's soccer with your sister. You used sport to shape yourself at that time.
Yes, 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 very quick. Sport was, well, I loved running, first off, and my sister did too. She kept playing soccer.
Voilà, on a essayé à un moment donné.
As teenagers, we tried for some time to create a women's football club, but we couldn't make it work. It was very complicated. So we switched to volleyball instead. I wasn't very tall, though, and but a club allowed us to create a women's section. It was the only club we found that would accept this. It ended up being a volleyball club, although we tried soccer first. Yeah, I love sports.
Mais on avait tenté d'abord le foot, et moi j'aime bien le sport. Moi, ça, j'adore le sport.
As you reminded us, you left southern Spain, Andalusia, the white city of Cadix, for this very dark Lyon you're describing. There is also a big contrast with the political regime in place in Spain at the time. It was Franco's dictatorship.
A dictatorship.
People maybe don't realize it ended quite recently, in 1975 only.
Absolutely.
When the dictator died. Your grandfather was a Republican and was part of those men and women who fought against Franco. Is it something that was transmitted to you during your childhood? Your grandfather's political fight?
Yes, my family story on my father's side, but also on my mother's, was really transmitted to me. I feel lucky to have grown up, indeed, outside my roots, but also shaping different ones with a history attached to them.
Mais du coup de pouvoir en avoir aussi d'autres, voilà. Mais surtout avec un récit. Très vite, je me suis intéressée vraiment à ce grand-père.
Very quickly, I became interested in this grandfather and this grandmother I never knew because she died after she got back from the Spanish War, and whose life was very similar to that of many of Spanish women at the time.
Notamment réfugié en France, puis reparti, un grand-père en prison.
My father, who found asylum in France as a kid and then went back to Spain. My grandfather, jailed and sentenced to death but not executed. When you're a child, these things seem so strange. The moment when you realize that your father lost his mother when he was 10 years old, for instance, it strikes you when you're a kid. You wish you understood better. But yes, political activism, dreams of a better world for yourself and for your children was something that really was very much passed down to me. My parents were not biased. They didn't bring us up with the idea that there were good people and bad people. Not really. It was a very open-minded education, highlighting knowledge, although they both quit school at a very early age. My mom is a seamstress. My dad did lots of things. He became an electrician, for example, but they both quit school before even 13 years old. They passed down the desire to learn and understand. I think it was due to the fact that we were not in the country we were born in. I probably pushed them to talk about this history and these links even more. The story was not told with nostalgia, but it obviously helped shape my commitment, including my political commitment.
Bien sûr que ça a construit mon engagement, mes engagements, dont mon engagement politique.
Your father was a trade union member too, I believe. There was therefore some kind of class consciousness, a left-wing political consciousness that was there.
Parce que je viens d'un milieu ouvrier, mes oncles étaient
of course.
Ouvriers aussi.
Yes, a left-wing leaning. A very strong social conscience. I come from a working-class environment. My uncles were factory workers too and construction workers. There were jobs in that area at the time.
De leur vie, quoi. Je voulais comprendre ces adultes qui étaient ma famille.
When I was a kid, I liked to sit in a corner and listen to the grown-up conversations. I loved hearing the stories of their lives. I wanted to understand those adults that formed my family, what they really had inside, because when you're a child, you don't always understand adults. And so I would sit in a corner and listen to them talk. Men talked a lot about work. Work was their life. Their families were very important to them too. But their dignity, what they carried, what they knew, what they were most proud of was their working achievements.
Très vite, j'ai pensé que la question principale, c'était la question du travail. Parce que de toute façon, c'était celle dont j'entendais parler. Et mon père était...
Very early, I came to the conclusion that work was the main topic, because it was the one I kept hearing about. My father was a trade union member.
Très révolté, même si avec l'âge, il s'est vraiment assagi.
He was very respectful, but also rebellious, although he settled down a bit with age. Yes, I had a taste for this. We lived in a working-class neighborhood, Rue de Bourbonnais. There were many factories nearby. I had a friend. I haven't seen her since. I'll say her name, though, maybe.
Please do. It's the right place for it.
Her name was Geneviève Mousteau. Geneviève Mousteau. Her father was a guard at a nearby factory. Our big thing as kids was to go and play in the factory when nobody was there, which was obviously very dangerous and completely forbidden, but we still did. So I grew up with the idea that factories, the labor world in a sense, was a world filled with very strong sensations. Because I kept on hearing very tough stories that seemed completely, that enable people to shape themselves. And this is how I developed my desire to work in labor law.
Right, and when we know what became of you and how your career evolved after this, we realize how much of an impact it might have had to have this kind of story growing up.
Of course.
And your mother, what kind of woman was she?
My mother is, I'm lucky enough to still have both my parents. My mother is a very beautiful woman, very elegant. She was a seamstress who loved, doing clothes. So she taught both my sister and I how to sew. We would draw clothes as we wanted them to be, and she would cut them, and then we would sew them with her. It was very joyful, although her life was not easy, because she was the last child of a very masculine family. So she grew up kind of pampered as a child. And then all of a sudden, she found herself in an environment where she didn't speak the language, where she couldn't work outside her home. She was at home all the time. Her connection to the outside world was through us, through school and childcare. She was a very kind and careful mother, very, very sweet. She sticked to the Spanish tradition, so she might think she had less space than my dad, but she actually took up more than just her own space.
Typical Andalusian.
Yes, an Andalusian.
Without stereotypes, of course.
And she had this side to herself, the idea that you can get out of any situation through humor, through joy. Even if life was hard, she had a real ability for happiness. Yeah, it feels good.
You became French when you were 14 and officially changed your first name. Anna became Anne. This is not random, changing name. It's a bit like a second birth. It's also kind of erasing your family's history, your origins. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel this vision of things belonged to another time.
It wasn't a statement, it just happened. We arrived in France knowing we were going to live here. My parents absolutely wanted both my sister and me to study. They really pushed us. And it went quite well at school. In primary school, teachers told my parents, if you're going to plan on staying in France, it would be better for your daughters to have the French nationality.
Si votre projet c'est vraiment de rester en France, pour vos filles, ça serait quand même mieux qu'elles aient la nationalité française. Et mon père, même si à l'époque, il y avait quand même une immigration pour le travail.
At the time, there was an actual work immigration. There was a need for an immigrant workforce. We weren't at all in the same context as we are today. But my father didn't want us to be confronted with waiting lines at the immigration office and all that. He thought, we all become French or we don't become French. It was a family thing. He told us about this decision to all become French and we agreed. We thought it was a good thing. Now, today, you can have two different nationalities, but at the time, the Franco regime required you to drop your Spanish nationality if you took another. So we went all in.
Aujourd'hui, on peut avoir la double nationalité, mais à l'époque, le régime franquiste imposait qu'on abandonne sa nationalité espagnole si on en prenait une autre. Donc, on bascule tous là-dedans. Et le changement de prénom...
And changing my first name actually happened without anyone asking our opinion. At school, they made it French without me asking anything. The teachers called me Anne, and that was okay. Why not? It didn't even shock me, because for me at home, we spoke Spanish, and outside home, it was the country's language. It was French.
Pourquoi pas, ça ne m'a même pas choquée parce que pour moi, il y avait dans la famille, dans l'intimité familiale, c'était l'espagnol, on parlait espagnol, mais à l'extérieur, c'était la langue du pays, c'était le français. Donc,
it seemed to make sense.
Yes, it made sense to me to have a first name for the outside and then one for the inside.
Et donc,
and on the paperwork, it was written like this. Even my father got Antoine when his real name is Antonio. So there you go.
Antoine, alors que c'est Antonio. Voilà.
Wow, that's something.
But we didn't have any kind of issue with it. It didn't shock us at all. There was no feeling of letting go of something. We embraced a nationality that was granted to us, that we had wanted and wished for. So we didn't have this feeling of, well, as a child, maybe it was different for my parents. They may have had thoughts around the fact that they were no longer Spanish. But they were very proud to become French. And we did this together. So I remember very well the day we were given our nationality certificates. My father came back to the house with these certified photocopies. I still have them at home with a stamp stuck on them. It's typed with a typewriter, you know, the ones that make holes when you type. And he told us, don't ever lose this. And we never lost it.
Je les ai toujours à la maison avec les timbres collés comme ça. C'est tapé à la machine où ça fait des trous quand vous tapez bon, les vieilles machines. Et il nous a dit, ne perdez jamais ça. Donc on n'a jamais perdu.
You still have it.
Yeah.
You often say that it's because of or thanks to your father that you became a feminist. What does it mean?
Well, my father supported the left, but he was still Spanish and a Spanish male. Inevitably, he had been raised with a number of stereotypes about women and girls, but he had 2 daughters, my sister and me. And he didn't raise us as girls. For example, you know, having to succeed at school. You know, on this matter, he was incredible. For him, it was all about education. He really pushed us. There was nothing too beautiful for us as long as we had studied well. But still, he was very wary of maintaining his father figure authority and male authority. And of course, he had this vision of society that was profoundly impacted by what Spain was, which was a very strict country.
Très soucieux d'avoir son autorité, alors de père, de mâle, etc. Et bien sûr, avec quand même une représentation de la société qui était très marquée par ce qu'était l'Espagne, qui était quand même un pays avec beaucoup de rigidité. Hein. C'est
very patriarchal.
C'est avant la Movida, c'est la question du candidat.
Patriarchal, yes. That was before the Movida movement and the fear of other people's opinions or that his daughters might go astray. The fear that any parent might have, of course, regardless of their child's gender. But my sister and I, as teenagers, we were both very willing to fight for our freedom, very assertive. So we had to convince him he could trust us, that nothing would happen to us, that we were big girls, capable of protecting ourselves and not fall into traps like other girls. We had to be assertive, really, really assertive.
Et voilà, on était des grandes filles qui étaient capables aussi de se protéger et de ne pas tomber dans des galères qui auraient pu effectivement, qui étaient aussi des galères dans lesquelles d'autres filles tombaient. Donc il a fallu quand même affirmer. Affirmer.
You sometimes say that you had to conquer your own freedom.
Donc du coup, assez vite quand même,
oh,
j'ai
yes.
commencé à m'intéresser au
Really?
féminisme.
So rather quickly, I started paying attention to feminism. It happened at a time when feminist movements really were spreading out. The abortion bill was just voted. There were calls for sexual freedom. I was a teenager, so I was interested. I went to the library a lot. I read plenty of books, and I took an interest in feminism.
Moi, c'est mon adolescence, donc je m'intéresse.
And later on, the Women's Library opened up in Lyon, Place des Célestins, and I just dived into this kind of literature, reading anything I could find.
La librairie des femmes, qui était Place des Célestins, donc où là, je plonge dans une littérature, mais en prenant tout ce qui vient, c'est-à-dire, c'est vraiment...
Vous avez un titre? Is there a book that comes to mind, one you read at the time and impacted you, left a theoretical mark on you?
Yes, indeed, Du côté des petites filles. What Are Little Girls Made Of, which is a book written by an Italian feminist on how gender education stems from stereotypes.
Gender construction.
Gender construction. This book was a tiny book as far as I can remember, but a beautiful one. And it was then that there was Anaïs Nin. I started to read absolutely anything I could get my hands on. Simone de Beauvoir, of course. Growing up around 17 or 18, I was convinced that feminism really was what could change the world radically. I felt that the day women would reach equality and places that were forbidden to them, well, that day things could really change. It's true that my family context drove me to question women's position in society, but above all, it's through literature that I got there and into politics after that.
C'est vrai que dans je dirais, le contexte familial, ça m'a poussée à vraiment ce questionnement sur la place des femmes. Mais au-delà de ça, c'est vraiment par la littérature aussi que je suis venue et que je suis venue après aussi à la politique.
This ties perfectly to my next question, which is a sort of a ritual of la poudre. Were you born a woman, or did you rather become one?
Oh, I think I really became one. I became one because I observed and I looked around and I didn't understand the difference between girls and boys. Why were we told different things? Why we were assigned such different roles? I really became one, yes. And I'm happy to be one because though women are not a minority, they're still raised as one. It's a complicated position because it forces you to overcome many obstacles directly connected to what you represent. But when you manage to overcome those, I believe it gives you strength. I consider myself lucky.
Bon, c'est dur parce que bien sûr, ça vous oblige à surmonter beaucoup d'obstacles qui sont liés à ce que vous êtes. Mais du coup, quand vous arrivez à les surmonter, ça donne aussi une force. Donc, je trouve que j'ai eu de la chance.
You did brilliant labor law studies. You became a labor inspector at only 23. It's a record, the youngest in France. You left Lyon for Paris when you were 24. Do you remember the young lady you were at the time? What were your dreams and inspirations?
I was an idealist. I loved studying, learning, understanding. I felt committed. I was someone who wanted to live fully, enjoy life, and I still have this desire to live my life to the fullest. And I was curious because obviously I came from a background that was very different from the one I was starting to evolve in. So there was this curiosity, a sense of, well, an opening to what I considered a series of experiences and opportunities. I actually had been dreaming about Paris for a long time. For me, the city was extraordinary and mythical. Everyone talked about Paris. Lyon wasn't very beautiful. I mean, it was a pretty city.
Moi, j'ai pris ça un peu comme des expériences, une succession d'expériences, de chance. Et Paris, en fait, j'en rêvais depuis longtemps. C'est-à-dire, pour moi, cette ville, elle était extraordinaire, mythique. On ne parlait que de Paris. Lyon n'était pas très belle. Enfin, c'était une belle ville. C'est une ville,
The competition we see today between France's major cities didn't exist yet.
There was, actually, because people from Lyon were and remained a bit, well, even if there are plenty of people from Lyon and Paris. But France was still very centralized. Everything happened in Paris. I remember during my studies, I kept telling myself, if I were in Paris, I'd get to see Sartre and this and that. And in my students' daydreams, I kept thinking of, what I would go to see, and I would talk to them, I would see them, and I'd try to, stuff that didn't exist in Lyon at the time, because social circles were much more closed at the time.
So you had this feeling that from Paris you could change society or the world, almost a political desire already?
I wasn't sure of it, that's for sure, but I thought, this is where things happen. Exactly what would happen, I don't know, but, well, everything. Everything that sparked my interest seemed to happen in Paris. So when I was nominated to the Parisian suburbs in the Val-de-Marne, I took it as an incredible opportunity. I didn't think of getting myself into a political career or whatever, but I got here and I discovered the city as a true Parisian. I was finally a Parisian, and I could discover the city walking and smelling and going everywhere, understanding it as a Parisian. Also, it was in the city of many opportunities because at the end of the day, my hometown Lyon was very, well, everybody had to remain in their social place. There was a very nice student life. I kept many of my friends from those days in Lyon. I still see them, we're close, but it was kind of segregated.
Chaque milieu social était bien à sa place. Bon, j'avais une vie d'étudiante super sympa. Hein. J'ai gardé vraiment beaucoup de mes amis de Lyon de cette époque. Je continue à les voir. On est bien sûr très proches, mais c'était quand même voilà, un esprit plus chacun chez soi, quoi. Et arriver ici, la ville cosmopolite avec des gens qui sont tous.
And I got to Paris, a cosmopolitan city where, well, everyone is uprooted. Well, almost everyone. And I thought, wow, I'm like them. I'm a Parisian because I'm uprooted just like them. I come from somewhere else. I mean, I had been dreaming about this city, and this is where I want to live. This is where I want to keep growing, to have kids. It was a total discovery that keeps on living in my current state of mind, in my relationship to Paris. For me, Paris, it's a living character. It's not a name, it's not a dot on a map, it's not just buildings with a history. No, it's a living character that transformed me. The city shaped me. I was proud to be a Parisian, to get here. My friends from Lyon, they came to visit me, and I bragged, and I would be like, oh, let's go to Trocadero or such and such a place. I mean, I really had this feeling I was a true Parisian. I was so happy.
So is it Paris that gave you, because you have described those profound, intimate political and feminist beliefs, but how did you get from all these things that inhabited you at the time to one day pushing the door of the Socialist Party, committing into politics and deciding that this is what you're going to do with your life? What triggered this?
Actually, I never really thought about the fact that I was going to, well, become an elected representative. At some point, I did push the door of the Socialist Party, but it was quite late in 1994, in fact, after the Socialist Party's defeat in 1993's parliamentary elections. I told myself, well, go and see maybe.
Va voir quoi, peut-être mon environnement était, il y avait beaucoup de militants socialistes.
I had many social activists around me at that time, and they tried to drag me to meetings. And quite frankly, when I saw the party's first meetings, I was like, help! I'm not going to waste my time here. I mean, from time to time, I would go to conferences with such and such leader from the party, but spending my whole evening in section meetings was, well, I wasn't interested in that at all. I had joined the CFDT, a French union, because of my labor inspector title, and I really enjoyed that. I felt useful. But in 1994, I decided to join the Socialist Party. I wasn't very involved as an activist back then, but yeah, I got my member card. And in 1996-97, the anticipated parliamentary election happened. And I had a socialist comrades asking me, well, why don't you run against Edouard Balladur in the 15th arrondissement? And let me tell you that my chances were really quite slim. But I thought at the time, oh, it's not my thing. I don't want to do this. Why are they coming to get me? I mean, I have to admit, it was kind of gratifying. But frankly, I wasn't really interested. So I happily declined. I mean, I had my professional life. At this time, I was moving. leaving the labor ministry, doing a lot of things. I had a mission at the International Office of Labor on Women around women's labor and how law could help. I was moving to the private sector as the head of human resources, so there was a whole lot of different professional things going on in 1997 with my career. And then Jospin won the election, and I told myself, wow, he's got an amazing team. It's a dream team.
Une autre vie professionnelle et 97, donc Lionel Jospin gagne.
I didn't know him, but I found him very inspiring. I liked the way he spoke about democracy. I mean, it moved me a lot. And so at this point, I mean, there's always a little bit of luck in this, but one of my former directors, who actually passed away, the former director of the Ministry of Labor, told me, you know, Martine Aubry is looking for someone on professional training, someone with your skills. And I think if you apply, you could get the job.
Et donc, à ce moment-là, c'est toujours un peu le hasard. C'est un de mes anciens directeurs qui vient de décéder, un directeur du ministère du Travail, me dit, tu sais, Martine Aubry, elle cherche quelqu'un sur la formation professionnelle, qui a les compétences.
It had been a year since I had left the public sector to go into the private one as head of human resources. And I was on this very nice launching pad, and I thought, well, I really want to do that. Yeah.
Donc, où on m'avait proposé, vraiment, j'étais sur une petite rampe de lancement qui était très sympa. Et je me dis, quand même, j'ai trop...
Tempting, isn't it?
Way too tempting. So I sent my resume, I got called back, and 1 hour later, I was hired. I handed in my resignation letter, and I joined Martine Aubry's office. There, I started to discover the political world, I'd say from the inside. But also from the good side, meaning with people who wanted to act, to move, to change things.
Le bon côté des choses, c'est-à-dire avec des gens qui avaient envie de faire, de bouger, de changer les choses,
There was an impulse as well. There was this incredible hope when Lionel Jospin was elected. The left wing was coming back to power in France.
La façon dont il gérait une équipe plurielle en donnant...
Absolutely. He was so... Well, he handled a team with various leanings, and he gave each and every one of us the chance, every one of his ministers, the chance to speak out. I mean, there were strong personalities, like Martine Aubry. And so, yes, I really started to understand, to learn, and I ended up saying to myself, well, this is quite interesting after all. I was working on matters of professional training, but I was still very tempted by the women's rights related issues. I was asked to contribute to the parity law, which I did with a lot of energy and desire. I remember this one discussion I had with Martine Aubry, and she said, well, there it is. We need women that have already been trained, that have experience, and we need to start thinking about this. Aren't you interested in the City Hall elections? I hadn't planned for this, of course, but I could see Bertrand Delanoë starting to prepare for the 2001 Paris race. I liked his story. I felt he was describing my life a little bit, and what he wanted to change matched the changes I wished for as a citizen. So I went to see him. At the beginning, he didn't understand that I was signaling to him that I wanted to support him, that I was in. And when he understood, he said, go for it. Basically, show me what you can do. And so I did.
Mais ce qui n'était pas du tout le cas. Et après, il a compris que en fait, je voulais me présenter. Donc, il m'a dit, écoute, vas-y, en gros, fais tes preuves. Donc, je l'ai soutenu.
I feel like there was a great deal of kindness around the beginning of your political journey.
At this time, yeah, really, because there was Martine Aubry, there was Elisabeth Guigou, there was
You also worked for Nicole Perry's office?
Nicole Perry, who was...
Nicole Perry, sorry. Secretary of State for Women's Rights.
As Secretary of State, right. She worked for Martine Aubry, and she worked on women's rights and professional training. So I was in a kind of environment and around women that was really...
We could talk about female solidarity?
Yes, I think this was very significant at that time. Obviously, there were some rivalries too, but it was a time when the law on parity was starting to come to life. This sort of first feminist discourse was being freed, and there were some personalities. Elisabeth Guigou, of course, who had a fundamental role in it, but also Marie-Lise Lebranchu, who I worked with too. She was the Minister of Justice. These women were extremely benevolent and kind to me.
Donc il y avait, ces femmes-là ont été quand même très accompagnantes, très bienveillantes.
It was a very tense moment. I'm going to give some background for listeners who may be a bit young to remember this debate from 1997, but I remember well.
Of course.
Yes, 20 years ago. So it was a bill that sets the obligation for political parties to have 50% of women on their electoral lists. Something that is still being lightheartedly ignored by many political parties today. At the time, there was this really intense fight, even between feminists. Some were asking, what is this? Does this mean women are not good enough? That we need to help them? That we need to create quotas? Help! This is essentialism at its best. The law really created strong tensions.
Indeed, and very quickly. The debate was between one side of women saying, we need to achieve this on our own, and another saying, well, actually, if we wait to achieve this on our own, it might be another 600 years before we get anywhere, so we need to force fate. But what actually happened, rather interestingly, is that by working in the minister's office, I had created connections between right-wing and left-wing women. And gateways with ministerial offices, women advisors that were directly or indirectly affected by this question of parity. So we created networks and formed alliances because we really need allies to support this law. At the Assembly, we heard some unbelievable remarks and statements on women. There were some beautiful speeches. Christiane Taubira, for example, beautiful, as always, on equality, parity, on the day the bill was to be voted. And we managed to overcome, I think, the political divide with women. There were some women, like Roselyne Bachelot, Mary Jo Zimmerman, plenty of right-wing women participated, nevertheless, because they knew exactly how things were in their political family. At the end of the day, we managed to overcome all those criticisms, but it was extremely violent. I remember at the beginning, this is funny, there was this big fight, including on the left, about not starting with 50% right away, for there had to be this first step at 40%.
Très violent. D'ailleurs, au début, je me souviens, ça c'était très drôle. Il y avait tout un combat, y compris à gauche, pour que la parité, ça soit pas 50%, qui est une première étape.
Wow, symbolically it would have been terrible.
Ça aurait été problématique.
I would have been terrible. We had to fight against this idea. I mean, very hard. We really pushed for parity.
Fait pousser.
And I remember the day the Council of Ministers on the Parity Bill was convoked. We still didn't have Lionel Jospin's final arbitration. The front page of Liberation was headlined, "A First Step at 40%. No one believed the law would actually pass if we went directly to a 50% women ratio. But happily, Lionel Jospin and Sylviane Azagansky played a big part in this.
His wife?
Yes, his wife. Lionel Jospin said parity is 50-50. Elisabeth Guigou was also part of those who weighed heavily on this decision. So, yes, there was this...
a fascinating feminist political fight.
Very, very powerful and fascinating. I really felt at this moment and lived for this bill. It was a beautiful apprenticeship. You're in an amazing place, an incredible position to understand and learn. Well, after that, we suffered in the 2002 defeat, but this tragedy, this drama, however you want to call it, but Jospin's 5 years were an incredible moment in time.
De Jospin ont été incroyables, quoi. Un moment incroyable.
In 2006, you published a book of interviews with your former cabinet director, Jean-Bernard Seine.
Yeah?
The book is called A Woman in the Arena. I have to admit I meditated on this title for a long time. It's interesting because on the one hand you stress on your femininity, which is not an obvious choice. Political women often do the opposite. And on the other hand, this arena, no joke intended on your Spanish origins, but this word means fighting adversity. What a title. Why did you choose it?
In fact, this book, I think, was published in 2006.
Yes, it was.
So basically, I'm elected in 2001 during...
You're elected alongside Bertrand Delanoë, the former mayor of Paris.
Yeah, in the mayor's office, yes. I'm Bertrand Delanoë's first deputy mayor.
Et donc, j'arrive ici. Moi, j'avais quand même 20 ans de vie professionnelle derrière moi, donc je n'étais pas... Voilà. Alors, certes, pour les gens qui suivaient les appareils politiques et le personnel...
I really thought the tough part was going to be the campaign, but what's really hard is what comes next. And so there I was with 20 years of professional experience behind me, but for people, I was coming out of nowhere. So for 4 to 5 years, it was, well, I had much less media coverage than I have now, but I still had to face constant attacks. Benevolence was completely out of the picture for every single day for 4 to 5 years. I kept telling myself, what do I do? Do I stay or do I leave? Because if I need to justify every single thing...
Dodge bullets.
Exactly. Dodge bullets. Prove my legitimacy. I thought I might have better things to do. At that time, by the way, I was offered to go back to the private sector with a very nice job offer. I thought about it long and hard. I took time to think, and after a while, we were in 2005, I thought, no, there's absolutely no reason to leave. I feel strong enough to stay. I get it now. And I noticed that there were plenty of women who were in exactly the same mindset as I was, full of energy, of will and desire, and also with flaws, obviously. Women have plenty of those, and so do men. And I still saw them quit, one after the other. And I thought to myself, wait, we've passed the parity law, but our issue is that women will do one mandate
and end up quitting because
they feel like the price is too high, it's just way too high to pay, and therefore we'll never get this transmission from past experience and never enable this to be a long-term thing. And that's why I told myself after a few years, I'll stay. And this is what that book is about.
Stepping into the arena. I'm here to stay and I'm going to have to fight.
Yes, stepping into the arena, yes. Absolutely. Yeah, and I said to myself, I understand how it works. When you're lucid about the process and motivations, it's easier than when you have trouble understanding where things are coming from. I thought it might be useful to talk about this experience to women my age or younger, so they could save time.
À qui ça pourra être utile, à qui ça pourra peut-être faire gagner du temps.
Yeah. When I said the title was also, I forgot the name. How do you call these spikes, this stick in bull's back in corrida?
Yes, the picador, the banderilla.
Banderillas, yes, that's the word I was looking for. So you had to endure attacks ever since you took the job in the Paris mayor's office. And it only got worse, which is an understatement.
Absolutely.
The attacks you have to put up with are unbearable. You receive death threats on social networks on a daily basis, but also in the press, because honestly, some of the articles, well, and then there is this book, which I'm not even going to mention, that's endlessly cruel to you. How are you able to stay, I almost want to say, healthy in the face of those attacks?
le parcours, le fait que...
First of all, I think that being someone with convictions, someone who likes to build things, well, that protected me a little. But it's true that when I became mayor, and especially last year, this crazy bashing
linked to your stand on cars.
This wave of hatred, because I'm trying to make sure people are actually able to breathe properly. It's quite disconcerting. I mean, you think, what's going on? What is this torrent of hatred? Why are all these people, including very good people, turning irrational? There were some TV and radio columnists who really went out of their role as journalists. You have to be strong. It wasn't easy. I found myself alone in the middle of this thing, taking punches from every side. And I told myself I had to be strong for my team. There were 150 people there who were doubting, and I couldn't allow that, because this was exactly what my haters wanted. They wanted to create doubt.
Et ça, c'est pas possible, parce que je pense que mes détracteurs, ce qu'ils voulaient, c'était ça. C'était distiller le doute.
To weaken you, of course.
Weaken, discourage, disgust. And I'm lucky enough to be very strong and have good people around me, to have my husband, my children, my friends, and you name it. Of course, there are some criticisms you need to accept, because you have to be able to question yourself and question your beliefs. But getting to that level of excess... in the end, I feel like the excessiveness of it all did not help these people's destructive cause. I mean, I'm still here, you see. This is also a fact. I listen. I move forward, and I got a lot of support from the Parisian people.
Que finalement, je suis toujours là, voilà. Ça aussi, c'est un fait.
I was feeling like I was living in two parallel worlds. One world, or microcosm of people getting very heated up by my actions for Paris, and by me, as if this city had suddenly become a hell on earth. And there was this other world with Parisians, some of whom don't necessarily have access to the media, but who experience their city daily, and who spoke to me, expressing their dissatisfactions, but also their support. It really felt like living in two parallel worlds.
A complete discrepancy.
A discrepancy, a lag between these two worlds. One supposedly representing reality, but that didn't match the reality at all that I was experiencing. So, little by little, you clear the ground, you untie the knots, and you try to explain how you're understanding things. It's pretty normal for some people to be in just head-on opposition, or for others to say this method is not the right one. Okay, but which method? Those who picked on our method are people who would have wanted for us to do nothing. I heard from my political opponents, they explained that, this needs to be done, but not like this, and not now, etc. Well, this means we don't do it at all. I did it 3 years after having been elected. I don't call that rushing into things. If I don't do it within those 3 years, it means that I won't do it at all, because there's only 3 more years left. And nothing can be done in such a short time. So I tried to explain things. I tried to understand. And
cette ville a des vrais résultats, c'est-à-dire on gagne tous les classements internationaux.
We've just moved up 19 places in the ranking done by the magazine The Economist.
Yes, we did. I saw. Incredible.
In terms of quality of life, although some disagree with that. Anyway, I keep going, and I listen. I'm not doing this for myself. If I only did things for me, I would just, chill out in the office and play powerful people games.
Maybe we can also untangle what is due to sexism in these attacks you're facing.
Of course.
There were even some rumors about your youngest son's filiation that I will not repeat here. It's pretty much the most basic insult towards women. She's an adultery.
Oh, yeah, she slept around, of course.
Exactly. Is this also something that helps you to keep going, to think that this is pure misogyny?
Of course.
Des choses très très fortes de ce point de vue-là, y compris par exemple, parce que ça c'est une réflexion que j'ai pu partager avec d'autres.
Of course, I had strong proof of that throughout my career. In the corporate world, for example, we were living the exact same thing. You get a position with responsibility, and people call feminine authority dictatorship. Well, no.
Indeed.
I'm in a position that requires authority. I need authority.
In portraits depicting you in the media, it's very striking. When you're still first deputy mayor, you're portrayed as just standing there, like a decorating object.
Absolutely.
Media depict you as a wallflower with no opinion that obeys Bertrand Delanoë blindly. And then, once you're actually elected mayor, you suddenly become this sort of bossy dragon that cuts head off. It's incredible.
Exactly. And let me tell you, this description is so wrong because I am and I have always been a very social being. Meaning that even when I disagree, I really enjoy being in places where people try to convince each other, learn from each other, understand each other, etc., in a collaborative way. Of course, at some points, decisions need to be made, and these decisions are on you. There are many decisions that I have to negotiate or to carry collectively. But there are also decisions, orientations, goals that you have to take on by yourself. And at some point, you have to face them on your own. Anyways, in a nutshell, those criticisms are all about questioning female authority.
Absolutely.
Because female authority keeps on being challenged. Some said to me, well, don't talk about it, because really, if you mention it, it's just going to get worse. And I said, no, I think one needs to talk about it like it is, and talking about sexism when it's being expressed in such a sneaky way is something that needs to be out there. I think it'll help others.
Exactly. And anyway, I wanted myself, my lungs, and my kids to thank you for what you're doing against cars in Paris.
Thank you. Thank you.
You totally have my support on this matter. I don't want to review with you the ongoing scandals, talk about the Funfair, Place de la Concorde, or the Vélib. We don't care about this here. Your time on La Poudre
we'll get
is
there
very
eventually.
precious. However, on La Poudre, we do talk about feminism. And there is a controversy that is totally at the heart of it. The one that confronted you to the festival Nyansapo, organized by the Afrofeminist association Moissy in the summer of 2017. I didn't get it.
You didn't?
As a feminist, I was disappointed and hurt that you seemed opposed to separate spaces meetings, especially since back in the days you followed the MLF, the French Women Liberation Movement, and you know that it was a technique used back then. I was also hurt to see you use a vocabulary pertaining to far-right activists. To say that a workshop is for black women only doesn't mean it's forbidden to white people, as you said. Would you do it differently today?
What you're saying is very interesting to me. My feeling on social diversity is this. It doesn't shock me that there would be some places where women meet amongst themselves because they plan on talking about violence against women and refuse, and they're right to do so in this specific context, a masculine presence there. And of course, there's all this in feminism's construction, but bringing in elements such as skin color or origins is extremely shocking to me.
Is it still shocking you?
Yes, it still shocks me very much. I didn't see why, as a woman facing women's problems every day, I should be banned from taking part in a meeting because origin is a criteria of selection. And I agree, reserved for women was not the right choice of term.
Forbidden, rather.
Forbidden, yes. But in any case, the wording should have been chosen very, very carefully. And you're right on how the far right is using this, but
if you understand that a woman doesn't feel like talking about rape in front of a man, maybe you can understand why a black woman wouldn't want to discuss racism in front of a white woman. It might inhibit her, it might...
This is far harder for me. I can't accept this. To me, being a woman should transcend everything. A black woman is obviously much more discriminated against than a white woman. That's obvious. It's clear as day. I suffered from racism when I was younger as a kid. I suffered from racism when I was insulted and called a dirty Arab because my hair is very dark. And it's easy to assume I was born on the other side of the Mediterranean. I also faced this kind of racism as a child. I was subjected to police identity controls when I was a student. I was the one being controlled, not my blonde friends. And I know that for Afro women,
Afro-descendants.
Afro-descendants, yes, it's 100 times this, 100 times this. And that... of course, that needs to come out to be worked on. But I can't. I really think it's a trap to try and split from the inside the quote-unquote feminist family, or to create differences based on color. Because feminism has always been international. It fights for fundamental rights, for economic and social rights, and for autonomy. Feminism has always been about solidarity and it's always had an international dimension. I was hurt personally. To me, not being authorized to take part in this kind of meeting categorized me, pushed me to the side of those who can act in a racist way. And it's not the case. I'm not that kind of person.
So you feel like you're being treated a racist when you're not?
In any case, I feel that there is, maybe in the way I feel it.
There was a sentence following a controversy during your campaign for Paris City Hall that really made me think. The press referred to your fight against Nathalie Kosciusko-Morizet as a fight between a star and a building guardian.
Yes.
This is pure racism, classism. This is extremely violent.
Yes, a class violence.
You reacted with a twist, saluting Parisian building guardians as the true stars of the capital city. Well done.
And ever since, I've been hosting a guardian party. Guardian meaning building guardians in French. Even many guardian parties in Paris. So thank you, Nathalie Kosciusko-Morizet.
And you said, I was lucky enough to shape myself with a certain pride of my origins. You pronounced these words. Do you feel that this pride is being denied to some immigrants' children today? Do you think it's possible nowadays to be proud to be Algerian, Moroccan, the same way you were proud to be Spanish?
I think indeed we need to help cultivate this pride of origins because, of course, this is what's being denied to people. It's a difficult process to build oneself, including feeling, I don't want to say integrated, but because when someone's French, born in France, having a different skin color or tone, skin tone, it should not make you feel any different. Yet very often the name or skin color is put forward. So it's obvious that everything has been done to take away this pride of origins. Sometimes I go to some neighborhoods to talk about my pride. To me, this pride is all about being able to recognize everyone else's right to acknowledge their parents' courage. And often when I talk to young people about this, or not even so young people, I tell them, when I was 30, meaning my parents' age, when they left Spain, I thought, imagine leaving now to a country where you don't speak the language, where you have no safety net. Leaving with 2 young children, just like this, you're thinking you're leaving to find something better. That's it's uncommonly brave. Those people are heroes, but these kids have never heard anyone talk about their parents in that way, because they're always.
And we certainly don't speak about them in those words today.
Still, not today. No, we talk about it with some form of a disparity. What strikes me most is that that disability, that color, origins, all these factors can worsen social difference. However, I believe that the social question remains absolutely critical. It's crucial. It remains fundamental. This is why I'm always a bit hurt when we try to define some kind of a boundary within a question that remains a social one for me. Each of us, obviously, we need to shape an understanding of how our own origins affect our paths. And at the same time, I'm not sure that this isolation in this fight is what enables us to not succeed, because that doesn't mean anything, but rather to live with dignity, to affirm what you are with dignity. I believe one rather needs to form alliances rather than create airtight compartments.
Thank you for your answer. I still have tons of questions to ask, but your advisor is knocking on the door. So let's jump directly to the last 3 ritual questions of La Poudre. Anne Hidalgo, how do you get along with your uterus?
Very well. I listen to it very well. I think it's been giving rhythm to my life. Yeah, we get along very well.
Congratulations. It's not that obvious for every woman.
No, but it's true. I think that one needs to understand it, to learn about it, and of course to live very well with it.
Anne Hidalgo, you're very much at home in this huge office full of history. I can tell, I can feel it. But it's not your home. It is not your room of your own. Do you still have time? Do you still have time and space to access this room?
Well, it's complicated. I like being able to cut myself off a little. Really, I need spare time for myself to think. This room of my own can be reading novels, going to movies. Those are not, real escapes, but maybe just more activities that enable me to understand what I am, what I want to do, and how I can do it. So I really try to make those moments exist and stand out. From time to time, I get a little pissed off because I have to say to my team members, just stop. I'm suffocating. Because there are indeed moments when I feel like I'm suffocating. And when that happens, oof. I need space, and I need some sort of emptiness. It can be on my own, it can be in someone's company, someone gentle, someone that enables me to just lay things down, just lay it down.
What does la poudre, the powder, mean to you?
La poudre d'escampette, as we say in French. Just poof.
Not bad.
It calls for vanishing. It's what allows you to escape, to go elsewhere, where you want to be.
Thank you very much, Anne Hidalgo.
Thank you.
Thank you to Anne Hidalgo for speaking up in La Poudre. Nouvelles Écoutes is the executive producer of La Poudre, a podcast produced by Aurore Meyer-Mailleux, prepared and recorded by Zisla Tortello, and mixed by Laurie Galigani. The English dubbing is made by Charles de Cilia and mixed by Clotilde Fauchil. Thank you to Sharon Mann for her voice in English.